What's up, guys? It's Eric with Verus Engineering, and on this week's video we're going to go over the project you see behind me. We started this project about 3 weeks ago when Jeremy Boysen from FT86Speedfactory dropped off his car as he picked up his GT4, and basically he wants to reduce some lap times and wants some aero development on his car. So this is the FT86Speedfactory Time Attack build. It has the ML24 wide body kit on it, and we're going to produce an aero kit for it. It's going to be one-off, completely custom. I'm going to go over where we're at on the current build and how we're going to do what we plan to do, and hopefully you find it interesting. So for this year's plan, we're going to keep it pretty simple. We're going to flat bottom the car to reduce drag. We're going to create a front splitter that creates a significant amount of downforce, and then we're going to run our dual element rear wing on the back. Combined, that should probably produce around 2,000 pounds of downforce at 120 miles per hour. We're going to obviously validate that with a CFD, and we are going to ensure that the entire package is working together and correctly. As the car sits, we believe the car made about 50 to 150 pounds of downforce at 120. We didn't actually baseline this car, but based off of our analysis that shows how much the body's lifting and we know how much an APR 250 and a front splitter roughly makes, we can estimate that the car was basically making about 150 pounds of downforce at 120. So going from last year's setup to this year's setup, we hope to increase downforce by about tenfold, so 10 times. We also are not going to increase drag significantly. Now we're at how are we going to do this? So basically we have to start by scanning the entire car. As you can see, there's this white chalky stuff on the entire car, and that is because we have to scan the entire car to get it into CAD world. Once we get it into CAD world, we have to do one of two things. One, we have to solidify the entire scan data, because scan data is, again, infinitely thin geometry. You can't CFD scan data. You have to solidify it. So we have to solidify the entire scan data. From there, we can actually run CFD. What we're also going to do with the scan data is design components directly off of it. This is what we do when we R&D parts for mass production as well. On a single one-off, it just takes a lot more time for less return as far as parts produced. So currently we're in the scanning phase. We're going to scan the entire car and then solidify it, CFD it, design parts to it. Moving on, we're actually going to be fabricating the entire kit as well in-house. It's going to require quite a bit of work, and we only have about 2.5 months to complete this in. So we are busting through as much as we can, as quickly as we can, and hopefully you'll actually see about a video a week of where we're at, how we're progressing, and we plan to share it all with everyone because we have nothing to hide, and it should be a fun project. We've never taken on something like this, and we're actually really excited about it, even though the man hours are going to be quite significant. A few other things that we're going to be actually looking at and helping Jeremy with on this build is the cooling. He's been having some issues with cooling. Me and Paul both have a lot of experience cooling high-power vehicles. So basically we're going to help him with the cooling pack and create a more efficient setup there, because he is seeing some high water temps and some high oil temps on track. So we're going to do our best to help him there. We may or may not have to modify the charge piping on both sides, depending on basically how we build the mounts for the splitter. The splitter is going to generate about 2 tons of downforce, so we do have to ensure that it's actually really mounted well. The only place that we can see that we can go off of is a crash beam, so the charge piping may have to be modified, hopefully not, because the less fabrication the better. We are going to be working on some fender liners, because airflow in this area is actually really bad without the fender liner, so we're going to have to create and fabricate something there. We are going to be cutting the front fenders quite a bit, trying to allow some evacuation of the air in both the front and the rear fenders. That will hopefully reduce some lift that the body is currently creating. The wing will be mounted directly to the rear frame. We have some pretty cool ideas on how we're going to do that. In theory, at least. We will see how that works out as we begin to manufacture. It's going to require some holes to be drilled and welding to happen, which is always fun to me because I don't get to do it that often. Again, we're keeping this year pretty tame in comparison to what we're capable of doing, but given the time frame and the amount of money that Jeremy's interested in currently spending, we are chipping off the low-hanging fruit, if you will. We're going to be doing a lot of cutting, hand fabricating. A dual element wing and a good solid front splitter can be used for the next year if he does want to take the car to the next level, which is then going to be modifying the body more, creating some diffuser tunnels on the underbody and generating more efficient downforce versus a larger front splitter. So the time frame is 2.5 months for the car build. And while that probably sounds like to some of you quite a bit of time, the amount of work that goes into designing, developing, actually CFDing a car and building that kit in 2.5 months is really pushing. The dual element rear wing is something we have not produced yet, so that has to get a mold and actually has to be produced within 2 months, which is very fast. Molds normally take a month, and carbon manufacturing takes at least a week or two from there, so that's 6 weeks. So we're hoping to get it mid-March, end of March. All the sheet metal cutting that's gonna have to be water jet out, that generally takes at least 1 to 2 weeks, sometimes 4 weeks depending on the lead time. Hand fabricating things, that all just takes a lot of man hours. And on top of that, so instead of just going straight to hand fabricating, we actually design everything in CAD first, which reduces the labor aspect as far as personal hours, but Paul and I are actually in the computer putting in labor hours, which a lot of people don't seem to think because we're not actually being physically laborious. It's not real labor, but me and Paul every day, 8 to 10 hours, we're behind the screen designing basically what we're going to fabricate to help us fabricate in a quicker time frame. To wrap everything up, we're working with FT86 Speedfactory and Jeremy Boysen to create a time attack car for his FRS, and hopefully it can compete this year and do pretty well. We're really excited to be part of this project and produce some really cool one-off parts that we've never done before. Stay tuned for the next one, and thanks for signing in.